Hi, and welcome. Today, I really want to share some of my thoughts on neurodivergence and in particular with teenage children with ADHD. I work with a lot of parents with ADHD, with a diagnosis of ADHD, and teenage children with ADHD. And there's a common struggle that they all share at this age and stage in their life. However, we're not going to focus on the parents just now. We're going to focus on the teenage children with ADHD. And now we term them neurodivergence. So let's think about ADHD. I am not going to tell you what ADHD is or the symptoms or the diagnosis or medication. You can simply look that up online. You'll find a lot of helpful resources on the subject. However, I do want to share some of my observations around working with teenage children with ADHD and their struggles are, and what the parents can do to support their teenage children with ADHD. However, before we dive in, as usual, my disclaimer, everything I share, we need to think about there's always a family context to think about, right? And if what I'm sharing, the strategy I'm offering, the insights I'm sharing with you the social media doesn't apply to your family context, please simply move on and do not use the strategies, right? You don't want to do that. So, but I'm relying on you to self-assess yourself, to think about whether what I'm sharing today will be suiting your family unique circumstances and your family context. Right, now let's think about teenage children with ADHD. Right, but before we think about that, I keep forgetting saying about that. Let's think about teenage children without ADHD and what the transition and what they're going through just now. We all know, actually, do we all know? Yeah, we all know teenage children are going through a lot at this current in time, whether physically, emotionally, psychologically, mentally, emotionally. I cannot stress enough the changes in the brain development and restructuring everything. There's one thing in particular in this time for teenage children is to think about their identity, who they are, and where they belong, what kind of person they are, what kind of person they want to be. And that is connected to social acceptance. You know, who are my friends, who are not my friends, but the part of them about who they are plays such a big role at this stage of their life. And I remember when I was a teenager myself, thinking, actually, who am I? What am I? And what kind of person I am? How will my parents describe me? How would my friends describe me? And who will want to be my friends? What would I want to be when I grow up? You know, do I want to be an ambitious woman? Do I want to be, or a career-driven woman? Do I want to be a mom? Do I want how old, how old am I? I want to get married, or how many boyfriends I wanted to have? So these are all very big questions. And the identity questions about who they are play such a big question, such a big question for them, and they're trying to navigate this. And if we are being honest with ourselves, right? I think it's only when I reached the age of 30 that I was so certain what kind of person I wanted to be and who am I, what am I, and where I'm going with my life, right? Not along a 15, 13, 14-year-old teenage children trying to figure out, like, what am I? And they're figuring out their identity. So it's really important to bear in mind about this part, about teenage children with no ADHD. That part could be very challenging already for them to think about this big question, identity question, right? And now thinking about teenage children with ADHD, there's another layer of complexity because we all want to fit in, we all want to belong. And when you have ADHD or when you have autism or when you have dyslexia or you have additional needs or when you are different, that is the thing. When you're different, you are seen different and you are treated differently, which can be very scary and frustrating for teenage children. No, sorry, I paused it because I'm thinking about inclusivity. When we talk about diversity, inclusivity, and all the inequality. But the reality is, when you have been different, you've been treated different. And then thinking about your teenage children with ADHD, the thing they're really struggling with is not about their organization, is not about their impulsivity, is not about their attention span. It's not about how well do I need to eat, about how how much screen time I have. What they're thinking about is, why am I different, right? Why am I different? Why can I not just be like my pals, where my pals can just accept me, who am I? However, there is a pretext to this, right? When you're being diagnosed with ADHD, it's really hard to grasp the concept of what that means to you. For teenage children, what does it mean that I have ADHD? Even if you're diagnosed with ADHD, the behavior manifests it very differently in boys and girls and an individual. So how do you support parents? As parents, how do you support, your teenage children? So then when you're reading the genetic things online, then you still need to think about, actually, does it fit into my family circumstances and fit my teenage children unique needs? Might need to self-assess that again. However, what I'm saying is your teenage children are thinking about, I am different, but I just want to be the same. So if you really want to think about how you can help your teenage children navigate this part of a journey and the identity and the ADHD, and what comes along with the ADHD, is to help them understand, what does ADHD mean to them? It's part of them, and how that part of them can be celebrated. Everybody is different. Everybody has their unique strengths, and how we can help them to see that part, see themselves as a person with lots of strengths, with a lot of differences. And bear in mind, we are all different. That's a very important message to give you to your teenage children who have ADHD. So help them navigate this part. Help them understand what ADHD means, what it means to them, and for them being diagnosed with ADHD. How do they see themselves, and how can they accept themselves? How they can embrace the differences. That's what I love to say. I'm Asian. I live in Scotland, but I embrace my differences in terms of, hey, I speak Mandarin, I speak Taiwanese, I have my culture, I eat a lot of Asian food, right? And I love that part about my culture. So we can do the same thing for our teenage children, while the peer pressure is really, influential, thinking like you need to be the same. But we want to educate our children, teenage children with ADHD. Differences is good, and this is you. And that needs to be celebrated, and praised and loved for who you are. So that's really important to help the teenagers to figure this puzzle out, to work through this puzzle. And it's not going to happen overnight. You have to, what's the word called, drip feeding them information, showing them how to navigate this part and come to learn who they are, what they are as a teenager with ADHD. And of course, there will be strategies you can help your teenage children with their behavior. And I already mentioned some of them, like eat well, reduce screen time, exercise, have good sleep hygiene, have a structure. These are all very helpful, and you can use these strategies to help your teenager to manage, themselves a bit better using these things. And if you think about it, all the strategies say, who doesn't need better sleep hygiene? Who doesn't need exercise? Who doesn't need structure? Who doesn't need to eat well? And who doesn't need to, monitor the screen time? We all do, right? So there's no difference in terms of how we support our teenage children. The biggest part of difference for me is really helping your teenage children understand what ADHD means to them, and how it's part of them, how they can come to accept that part and celebrate and love that differences. The other part, I said the other partner, that is a Chinese, I'm sorry. The other part is for the parents come to understand what I mean too, for that your teenage children with ADHD, and how can you celebrate, embrace the differences too. Right, I hope this part is really helpful, and thinking about how you can help your teenage children navigate this, because this part influence who they are, what they will be, and how they see themselves. It can promote their self-confidence if we can help them navigate this part of the journey. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.